Hi, my group is myself, Jobin, and Kabur, and we are presenting today on the classification of pixel tracks to improve track reconstruction from proton-proton collisions. Okay, so the first thing we're going to start out with is introducing CERN. So CERN is a big organization of scientists, and they're interested in the fundamental building blocks of nature. It's a really big hub for particle physics study, basically. So it's based in Europe. It's also called, or the acronym is the European Council for Nuclear Research in French. And it's in the Franco-Swiss border near Geneva. And one of their really, really large experiments is the Large Hadron Collider, so the LHC, and that's the world's most powerful, largest particle accelerator. It started up in 2008, and they have 4 particle detectors in the Hadron Collider. So basically, in the figure you see to the right, all of that underground circular tubing is the Large Hadron Collider, and they shoot beams across it and they collide, and then they're detected by those detectors. Okay.
Now that the stage has been set for where our data is created, we can talk a little bit about the process of how the data comes to be. The detector you see on the left is one of the 4 that you saw earlier as part of the LHC. It's called the CMS, or the compact muon solenoid. And this is the home to where our data comes from. And it also comes from particle collisions that happen at this, that are essentially pictures are taken from the beams at this detector. And the process looks like protons being shot in this 27-kilometer giant circular tube full of superconducting magnets, where these particles are sped up to near light speeds and forced to collide. Well, why would we want them to collide? Protons are made up of a bunch of small particles, and colliding these particles at super high speeds allows for a lot of energy, because the faster the particle beams travel, the more energy they have, and this wealth of energy allows for the possibility to see some new physics. The goal of these experiments is to see what happens, but also to track the exact pathways that result from the collisions, which is something we're going to be looking at. We're going to make sure that we can reconstruct these pixel tracks very accurately. And essentially, it's like searching for a needle in a haystack. We have to be able to discern what's a real signal and what's a fake signal, because we want to get the most accurate picture of what happened. Just like on the left, we want to see exactly where those lines are going through the detector. So let's check out the next slide. So we have the needle in the haystack. A really good example of this needle that we happen to find is the Higgs boson. It turns out that the significance of finding this is about 5 sigma, and that probability, the probability of finding something like that, to be so sure of it, is 1 in 3.5 million, which is very rare. This is only possible because we were able to run so many collisions, which we could also call luminosity for a unit of collision. And being stuck at around 7 tera electron volts kind of limits the physics that we can study. So we and CERN look to high luminosity to have more collisions. So the process of the building of the high luminosity LHC started and should finish around 2024, where we can expect collisions or inverse femtobarns of 4,000, like up to 4,000 times, or 10 times the amount it was in the past 10 years. Good for the next one.
Thanks, Kabor. So because of all these new changes, we're going to have to see more collisions will result in needing more computing resources. Right now, what CERN is using is EOS, which is one of their data centers. They're using it for storage, ultra-fast computing power, and security. Currently, there's 470 processor cores and 11,000 servers that run 24/7. There's about up to 1 billion particle collisions that can take place every second inside the LHC's experiment detectors. It's not possible to read all these events, but a trigger system is used, therefore, to filter some of the data and use the potentially interesting ones for further analysis. How much data can we handle now? So the LHC produces about 90 petabytes of data a year, and additional 25 petabytes of data are produced for other non-LHC experiments at CERN. The active particle tracking is manageable now, but soon will present a massive burden as the LHC upgrades to the high luminosity LHC. And through this upgrade, it is projected to produce data that is tenfold the size of the previous 3 LHC runs combined, on the order of exabytes. So on the next slide, we can see that there is a dashboard here that we quickly saw, and it gives you some data on the cloud and virtual machines, and that's what is being used in the CERN HQ. And then you can see examples of like 2 petabytes of RAM and 482,000 cores online this week that the screenshot was taken. So next.
Okay, so the next thing we're gonna look at is how we can actually pull information from all of these particle collisions. So once they're detected, we get an output of a ton of data, like Jobin was saying, and in order to get them into readable form, we have to process the data, which is weeding out the background noise from the signal in order for physicists to use it. So the current methods to approach this, they're called particle tracking algorithms, and the current methods are working great. They're successful with the amount of data that is coming through the LHC, and they're good. But we're moving into this high luminosity phase, which means more data. And because these algorithms, like the combinatorial Kalman filter, they're sequential algorithms, they don't scale very well. They're not going to be sufficient for the new phase, the new amount of data. So we're going to look to machine learning to solve that problem. And these machine learning algorithms, like classification algorithms that we see in this data science masters, they scale better. They can deal with highly dimensional data. They can model nonlinear data and nonlinear relationships, and they parallelize easily. So they can be run on, different computing machines at the same time, reducing that time. And in that visualization, you can see an example of highly dimensional data. Okay.
So to analyze this data, we found it at the CERN Open Data Lab. They have a repository where they can have data about the particle tracking that they run. Because this data set was extremely large, we had to have a good amount of RAM and computing power for it to analyze and use models. So we used the mainframe at SMU. And the 2 models that we were looking into was the boosted decision tree and the dense neural network.
So what did we find? Well, machine learning turned out to be successful in path reconstruction. And while the analysis strategies that CERN's been using have been good, they're always looking to improve. So in turning to machine learning, we found that we could get better results leveraging things like deep neural networks and boosted decision trees. The figure on the left is the inner hit layer, the middle is the outer hit layer, and the rightmost plot shows a collection of a simulation of the detector where the red's the beam spot, you have the red lines going through the inner and out the outer there being the real true pixel seeds, and the dotted lines being the fake pixel seeds. And Hallie.
In this presentation, so we saw a really good example of how high energy physics can benefit from all these different machine learning algorithms like neural nets, boosted decision trees, and this classification issue. So through high energy physics, we can continue to discover more fundamentals of our universe and use machine learning along the way to accomplish that.